my little yarnivores and spiderettes, Fiber Spider back again with another tutorial just for you. And today I'm going to show you how to crochet this really simple, lacy, lovely shawl called the Spider Stitch Shawl. And yes, they look like little clusters of spiders, yet they're happy, friendly little spiders. Might change your opinion on the species. And it's really, really quite simple. And it's only a 3-row repeat, which I'm going to show you in its entirety, of course. Now, also in the description box down below, I'm going to put the link to the free pattern, and I did, as I usually do, a slight variation. The pattern called for an edging along this side and this side. Not the top edge. The top edge, I think, is quite lovely on its own, really quite simple. The other two sides did call for edging. However, I think this piece looks fabulous without. I like a nice clean looking edge. However, if you choose to do so, you can find it in the pattern, which again, in the description box down below. By all means, if you wish to do so, go right ahead. I always say, and you should know this by now, to each their own, and that's quite all right. And so, always trying to be informative, this colorway and yarn that I used was Mondola yarn. Love the yarn. No, I'm not sponsored, but I always like to let you guys know what it is that I'm using. So this was Mondola by Lion Brand, and it is the colorway of Unicorn. It's so fluffy! Despicable Me reference. Couldn't help it. So, I thought that this would be a lovely yarn for the pattern, and it's, in case if you don't know, it is a weight of 3, and I used a size H crochet hook. You can use whatever yarn and hook size works for you. Just check the label on the yarn. See, it's a weight of 3, and it calls for a size H. Me personally, I tend to crochet a little tightly, so sometimes I go a little bit bigger. Depends on the stitch. But I thought this is just absolutely gorgeous, and I just had to share it with you. So again, I'm going to be using a weight of 3 yarn for this tutorial and a size H hook, but use whatever works for you. And without further ado, let's get started. Alrighty, so I have my handy dandy H size crochet hook, and this happens to be, again, Lion Brand. This time it is the Big Scoops Ice Cream. Cannot remember the colorway. I want to say it's Cookies and Cream, I think it is. At any rate, let's get into this, shall we? Alright, so for row 1, really, really quick and simple, we're going to start, of course, by doing our slip knot. Big shocker, right? All right, so we got our slip knot, and we're going to start by chaining up 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then into that first chain that we created, we are going to do 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. So we have a total of 3 double crochets because that first chaining of 4 counts as a double crochet, and that first chain counts as our base. All right, so that's the end of row 1. All right, row 2. Okay, so for row 2, we are going to start by chaining up 3, turn the work, and then do 2 double crochets into this first stitch right here. So we're going to have a cluster of 3 double crochets, like so. Okay. Then we're going to chain 4, and we need another cluster at the end. So we are going to do 3 double crochets into the last double crochet. Now this first one can be a little bit tricky, but we will do this. So basically it's into the top of this double crochet right here. So it's easier if you separate it and you turn it just a little bit so that you can see both loops of your V and scooch your hook right into there, like so. I know it can be a little bit tricky, but just be patient, and above all, don't forget to breathe. So we've got 1 double crochet, and then we need 2 more into that same stitch. All right. So we have 2 clusters separated by a chain 4 space, and that is the end of row 2. Alrighty, onwards to row number 3. So for the third row, again, we're going to start by chaining up 3. And then turn the work. And again, we're going to do 2 double crochets into this first stitch right here because we need our cluster. So we've got our cluster of 3 double crochets at the end. Okay. Now we're going to chain 6 above our chain 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we need to finish again by doing another cluster at the end. So doing 3 double crochets into that first double crochet. This time it's a little bit easier because it's been established. Like right into there. We're going to do our doubles. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So before we had 2 clusters separated by a chain 4 space. Now we have 2 clusters separated by a chain 6 space. And that is the end of row 3. All right, row 4. So for row 4, it's going to start off pretty much the same. We're starting by chaining up of 3. Turn the work. 2 double crochets into that first stitch because we need our cluster of 3 to begin with, also to end with, but we're going to get there. So we've got our 3 double crochet cluster at the end. Then we are going to chain 8. So we went from 4 to 6, now to 8 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Did I miss one? 1, 2, 3, 6. Good. Okay. 7 and 8. All right. And then again, we need to do our double crochet cluster into the last double crochet at the end. It's all about symmetry and growth. So that's 1. And then 2 more. There we go. All right. So it's branching out here. All right. And that's the end of row 4. All right, row 5. This is where things start to get a little interesting. So as per usual, we're going to start by chaining up of 3. Turn the work and do 2 more double crochets into that first stitch, just as we have been. Nothing new there, but it will get different, believe you me. All right, so we have our end cluster here. All right, now we need to create a chain 4 again, just like we did down here. This is how it sort of branches out. So we're going to start by doing, after our cluster of 3 double crochets, a chaining of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then skipping the center double crochet going into the third, because this is 1, 2, and 3. So into the third double crochet, we're going to do another cluster of 3 double crochets. And 2 and 3. So as you can see, what we had down here, we now have up here as well. And we're going to have another one on the other side. However, what we need to do is we need to gather up our chains from before. So to do that, what we are going to do is chain 2, and then doing a single crochet into this chain 4 space. Now I know this may sound rather weird, but it does work. All you need to do is be patient, breathe, and it doesn't hurt to practice this a little bit so that you get your tension right. So what you're doing is you're going underneath here and you're pulling up your yarn and doing a single crochet. And you have essentially done sort of like a cinching zip tie maneuver, getting all of your chains together. Okay, and I'm going to show you that again. So chaining of 2, just as I had done before. And basically you're just going in underneath that chain 4 space and then pulling your yarn up and then completing your single crochet. And you know, it takes a little getting used to, I'm not going to lie, because it is a little foreign going into those spaces. And you can fix the chains, you know, if they're a little bit wonky, no worries. So after doing your your single crochet into that chain 4 space, gathering up your chains, after doing the single crochet, you chain 2 again, and then into this cluster of 3, into the first double crochet, you do 3 double crochet stitches. So that's 1 and 2 and 3. Then we need to chain 4 again. And then into the last double crochet, we need to do 3 double crochet stitches for a final ending cluster on this edge. All right, so as you can see, cluster, chain 4, cluster, chain 2, single crochet gather, chain 2, cluster, chain 4, cluster. And just like we had down here, it was a cluster, chain 4, cluster. We're going to continue on in the same vein with chain 6s up here. It's going to keep growing exponentially as we keep going. You'll see. All right, row number 6. We're going to get right into this by starting with our chaining of 3. Turn the work, 2 double crochets into that first stitch. We're always beginning and ending with a cluster, which is a nice way of beginning and ending, I think. All right, so we've got our cluster, and now we're going to chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so now we need to go into the last double crochet of these 2 clusters. So the thing is, we have to skip 1, 2, 3, and 4, do not regard this chain 4 space at all. So we did have a total of 6 double crochets, 2 clusters. So we went into the first one, we're skipping 4, and we're going into the last one right over here. So we chain 6, going into that last double crochet with another cluster, 3 double crochets, so it's going to keep growing outwards. Then what we need to do is we need to bridge the gap over this spider stitch. So to do that, we are going to chain 1 and then into, see, we have our 2 clusters here. Into the first double crochet of this cluster, we're going to do another cluster. Oops, it would help if I yarned over first, wouldn't it? There we go. So that's 1 and 2 and 3. Then we need to go over and across by chaining 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then into the last double crochet, we're going to do another cluster, like so. And right now, this is, in essence, the preliminaries. Once we do the first 10 rows, then the repeat really starts to get underway. So for this row, it was cluster, chain 6, cluster, chain 1, cluster, chain 6, cluster, just as a little recap. So that's the end of row 6. All right, row 7. Okay, so for row 7, we're going to chain up 3 and then do 2 double crochets into that first stitch, of course, for our obligatory cluster at the beginning. But he's a nice cluster. So, all right, so then we need to do 8 chains because we have 4, then 6, so we need to go up to 8. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so into this chain 1 space, we're going to do another cluster. Now, I find what helps is when you have this really long chain and you're going to do your cluster, I find that it helps if you hold the yarn over in place so that your tension does not get all wonky. You see? I really find that that helps. And after doing this entire shawl, any little trick that works is a trick worth having. So we did our cluster, a chaining of 8 and another cluster in that chain 1 space. So now we need another chaining of 8 and a cluster at the end. So let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yarning over, hold the yarn, and then going into that last double crochet. There we go. And we'll do our cluster on this edge. Ta-da! Honestly, these rows I love the most because they go so darn quickly. All right, so, and we will continue on And yeah, that's the end of row 7, so we'll continue on with row 8. Alrighty, row 8. Okay, so this is where things are going to start to appear, to have the repetition about them. In fact, rows 8, 9, and 10 are the repeat rows. But I'm going to do a couple of repeats for you because I really like to be thorough with you. So we're going to start, of course, by chaining up a 3, turn the work, and then 2 doubles into the first stitch for our beginning cluster. Okay, then because we ended off on the 8 chain, what we're going to need to do is chain 4 and do a cluster into the third double crochet of that cluster. Oops. There we go. All right, so cluster, chain 4, cluster. Now we need to grab our chains. So to begin with, we need to chain 2 and then do a single crochet underneath the 4 chain, grabbing all of the chains like so. Chain 2 again, and then into this cluster, in that first double crochet, 3 double crochets, chain 4, and then in the last double crochet of the cluster, we're going to do another cluster of 3 double crochets. All right. Then we need to gather up our chains once again. So that's going to be a chaining of 2. And then into the chain 4 space at the bottom, we do going in, and we're going to do a single crochet, gathering all of those up together, chain 2, and then into the last cluster, we're going to do a cluster, chain 4 cluster. So into that first double crochet, we do a cluster of 3 double crochets, chain 4, and then into the last double crochet, we do another cluster. Now it does pay to make your initial chain 3s just a little bit loose, because on every row you are going to be working into them. So it does help if your initial chain 3s are a little bit loose. And I often say that, and I don't always listen to my own advice, but hey. All right, so we'll recap. We've got a cluster, chain 4 cluster, chain 2, gathering single crochet, chain 2, cluster, chain 4, cluster, chain 2, gathering single crochet, chain 2, cluster, chain 4, cluster. Ta-da! And actually, this is the top edge of the finished shawl, row 8. All right, so we're going to continue right along with row 9. All right, row 9. So for row 9, we're going to start by chaining up 3, trying to do it loosely this time. And then into that first stitch, we do 2 double crochet stitches, like so. Then, because we just did a chain 4, we need to do a chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then into the last double crochet of the opposing cluster, we're going to do another cluster. Three doubles right in there. And then we need to bridge the gap over this spider stitch. So we're going to chain 1, and then into the first double crochet of this cluster, we do another cluster. That's 1 and 2 and 3. Then we need to go over this chaining of 4, so we need to chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then into the third double crochet of this cluster, we do another cluster. So that's 1 and 2 and 3. So then we need to bridge the gap over this spider stitch. So we need to chain 1, and then into the first double crochet of this cluster, we're going to do another cluster. Oops. That's 1, 2, and 3. And then we need to go over this chaining of 4 with a chaining of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then, last but not least, into the last double crochet of the end cluster, we need to do, yes, you guessed it, another cluster. There we are. All right, da-da-da-da. And that's the end of row 9. Isn't that pretty? All right. All right, row 10. It's probably not going to come as a shock to you, but we're going to start by chaining of 3. 1, 2, and 3. Then we turn our work. 2 double crochets into that first stitch. There we are. And so we had 4 and then 6. So now we need to do 8 again. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I like to hold my yarn over, as I mentioned before. And we're going to need to do another cluster into this chain 1 space in between the clusters. So that's 1 and 2 and 3. Just like before. Okay. And then into this chain 1 space, we're going to need to do another cluster. So we need to do another chaining of 8 across this chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Grab the yarn over, and going into the chain 1 space with 3 doubles. Okay. And then once more, chaining of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Grab our yarn over, and into the final double crochet on the end here, do another cluster. And there you have it. That is the end of row 10. Now, just basically it's a matter of keep going in this fashion, repeat rows 8 through 10, but you would end on a row 8, okay? You wouldn't want to end on row 10 because you have these really big open loops at the top, and that would get snagged on something. So you would end on row 8. You would finish row 8, and then if you so chose, you would do the edging here and here, the two bottom shorter edges you would do the edging on. Personally, because of the shawl that I did with the color changing going in the horizontal fashion, I didn't think that the notion of doing an edging that went across all of those different color changes, I didn't think that that would look very nice. However, if it were done in a solid color yarn, I think it would look, rather becoming. But as I always say, to each their own. So, because I really want to make sure that you guys got this, I'm going to do one more repeat. I'm going to do rows 8 through 10 again for you because I really, I want to make sure you guys got it, okay? So we're going to do 8 through 10 again. Alrighty. Alright, so we're going to do a repeat of row 8 for you. So that is going to start by our chaining of 3. Turn the work, 2 doubles into the first stitch, okay, and then we need to chain 4, and skipping the stitch next, we're going to go into the third with another cluster. There we go. So we've got cluster, chain 4, cluster. So now we need to grab these chains. So we need to chain 2. And then going into that chain 4 space, we need to do a single crochet around all of our chains. Gather them up. Chain 2. And then into the first double crochet of this cluster, we need to do another cluster of 3 doubles. Okay, and then we need to chain 4 again, and then skipping the next double crochet going into the third of the previous cluster, we're going to do another cluster. So that's 1 and 2 and 3. Okay, so we have to gather up these chains, so we're going to chain 2, and into the chain 4 space, we're going to do a single crochet, gathering up all of our previous chains, chain 2, into the first double crochet of the next cluster we have here, we're going to do another cluster. So that's 3 doubles, then we chain 4, and then into the third double crochet of the same cluster, we do another cluster of 3 doubles. All right, then we need to gather up these chains, so we chain 2, and then into the chain 4 space, we go in and we do a single crochet, gathering them up, chain 2, and then into the last cluster, on the first double crochet, we do a cluster. So that's 1 and 2 and 3, chain 4. Okay, and then into the last double crochet, we do another cluster. Okay, and that is the end of row 8 on the repeat. Now, like I said, when you are ready to finish this project, you would end after doing row 8. Okay, rows 8 through 10, that is the repeat, but when you are finishing up the project, you would want this nice, rather finished looking edge for your project. So after finishing row 8, you can leave off. You don't have to do rows 9 and 10 again if you're happy with the dimensions. Now, by the way, the shawl that I had showed before, I used 1 skein of the mandala yarn in order to complete the shawl. It's a decent size. However, if you wanted to go bigger, I would say definitely, to err on the side of caution, I always say get 2 balls of, 2 skeins of yarn whenever you're doing a shawl, because, especially if you have a dye lot, I would always err on the side of caution, buy more than you think you're going to need. And that way you'll be safe. So we're going to continue on with the repeat of row 9. All right, so for row 9 again, we are going to begin by chaining up 3, turn the work, 2 double crochets into the first stitch, there we are, and we did a chaining of 4, so we need to do a chaining of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So into the last double crochet of this cluster, we do another cluster of 3 doubles. Oops, if I can make this work. I think I can. There we go. So that's 1 and 2 and 3. All right, and we need to bridge the gap over this spider stitch. So we chain 1, and into the first double crochet of the next cluster, we do another cluster. 3 doubles. Okay, then going over this chain 4, we need to do another chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So into the last double crochet of this cluster, we do another cluster. Like so. Okay, then we need to bridge the gap over this spider. So we chain 1, and into the first double crochet of this cluster, we do another cluster. There we go. And then going over this chain 4, we need another chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And into the last double crochet of the opposing cluster, we do another cluster. Okay, then bridging the gap over this spider, we chain 1, and into the next cluster, the first double crochet, we go in and we do another cluster. And I need to pull out some more yarn, I'm sorry. So that's 2 and 3. And then going over this chain 4, we need to chain 6 again. There we go. And then into the very last double crochet, we do another cluster of 3 doubles if I can get my hook underneath both loops of the V. Yes, haha. See, a little bit of tenacity goes a long way. All right. Ta-da! And that's the end of the 9th row. All right, and we've got the repeat of row 10. So we're going to start by chaining up a 3, turn the work, 2 double crochets into the first double crochet. There we go. So we've got a total of 3, our cluster. And so now we need to doing our chaining of 8, because we had 4, 6. So now we have to do a chaining of 8, and we're going to do another cluster into this chain 1 space. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hold the yarn over, going into our chain 1 space, and we'll do our cluster. Okay, chain 8 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Holding the yarn over, going into the next chain 1 space for another cluster. Okay, chain 8 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Holding that yarn over, going into the next chain 1 space right down in here. All right. Then, last but not least, we chain 8 one more time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Holding that yarn over, and into the last double crochet, we do our final cluster for this row. Easy as that. And so you just continue doing rows 8 through 10 over and over and over. And then, as I said, you would do row 8 because you would want to close up these chains, cinch them together. And it really looks quite nice after doing row 8. So let's see. So we've got all of our little spider friends, all clusters. It looks quite nice. Perhaps I should have used this yarn instead, but no, I'm absolutely in love with the stitch, and I really, really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I always enjoy showing you. So listen, if you did like this, please hit the little like, thumbs up button down below. Your support means ever so much to me. And if you have any questions, comments, what have you, do so in the comment section down below, because I really love hearing from you. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button already, please do so, because I try to post videos, excusez-moi. I try to post videos as often as I can, whether it be knitting, crocheting, or audiobook narration. And so, without further ado, I want you all to stay inspired, stay caffeinated, and above all, stay stitching. I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now.